Welcome back to the show, everybody. I've had multiple requests in the past to do an episode showing how I check over a new to me machine, or any machine that you're not entirely familiar with regarding its past, the maintenance, what it may have been through, how many hours it has on it. So we've got the Super W4 here. I just picked up recently, and I'm going to just walk through my whole pre-check routine on a machine that, well, like I said, is new to me. So this is northern climate. You can see the leaves have been falling. That means winter is around the corner. And one thing we always want to check, even before engine oil, is the strength of the antifreeze coolant, because in a few weeks this could be frozen up and split wide open if this is not up to par. So encouraging signs already. It's nice and clean. It's full to the top. I prefer to use a refractometer like this. Otherwise, there's the more common squeeze bulb hydrometers. They're both effective. This refractometer comes with this little tube. You squeeze the bulb on the end and it pulls up a little sample of the coolant. You put the coolant on this black rectangle right here. Get a good amount on there. These surplus can go back in the radiator. Then you flip this little clear screen down, and then what you do is you look in the back end of it, and we're never going to see it with a GoPro, but depending on how good the antifreeze coolant is, there will be a line on a scale in here that shows up, tells you exactly how strong your antifreeze coolant mixture is. And we are good here, 25 below zero. So put it all back, all nice, store it away. There we go. Next, we might as well start at the front and work to the back. Let's check the engine oil. And just like a Farm All H, we've got these two petcocks on the side of the oil pan. So this is your full level, this is your low level. And what you do is you open them, and if you're full, you'll get some oil that runs out this top one. So yeah, we've got a little bit. I heard a drop. Yeah. And it looks clean. Rather clean, really. It's not tar, so that's a good sign. We know we're at least full on oil. Close that back up. Down underneath now, and here's something I want to do. I like to crack all of the plugs in all the compartments to make sure there has not been any water that's settled out and is on the bottom of things. And we got a little bit of a swale up in the bottom of this oil pan. That's okay. I'll just pop that back flat the first time I have the oil pan off. And come on, you know, it's me. Of course, I'm going to find a reason to take this oil pan off eventually. That just always happens. But square-headed drain plugs are good for this. I don't know if you can see, this one's getting mighty rounded. That's why I keep a healthy supply of new pipe plugs on hand with nice big square drives on the end. I'll go and replace those whenever I find them rounded off. Hopefully this one is not too tight. For all the crescent wrench lovers of the world, this one's for you. Yes, fortunately not too tight. I'm not sure I could have gotten it loose if it was really bad. We'll get this out just until there, like it dances on the threads. Typically if there's water in a compartment, it'll drip out when you can dance it on the threads like that, and I'm not seeing anything. So that's a good sign. Okay, we've got good clean oil. I don't have any antifreeze, no water running out, so I really don't have a reason to change it right now, but I've got this new plug here. I think a good low-level pan oil sample is going to be achieved by quickly pulling this rounded one out and then trying to quickly start this new one in. Let's make a mess. Oil's cheap, I've got more. That wasn't bad, really, for starting a plug under duress. There's no really bad goopy stuff that's settled out inside the old plug. That's very good. that's all the oil we lost. Yep, that one's going right to the scrap bin. But having a look at it, there's no moisture in that at all. It's getting a little bit brown, but for a tractor that's due to go into storage for the next 5-6 months, that is plenty good for now. We're not going to change oil, so I guess the filter gets to live to see another day. Working on back, having a look at the sediment bowl. It's a little bit of a dripper. It's not running out. I don't see any water in there, and I don't see any rust. I looked down into the tank earlier with a flashlight. We'll never see it with a GoPro, but the fuel tank looked pretty clean in there as well, rust free. So we are going to leave that alone. We'll go back to the transmission now. That's how you get the pan in place the easy way, right there. I want to check the fluid level. So the level plug is right here on the side. I will crack that loose. All right. Now if we're full, we should have fluid to this plug, just to the bottom of it. And okay, we got plenty, and it's pretty brown. All right, so does that mean we're over full? Brown indicates there's been some moisture that got in there mixed with the oil. Over full, does that mean we've had a lot of water in there? I'm just going to cinch this so it stops dripping for now. Visual cues. You see, we have no rain cap. I've had this soup can on the exhaust, but look at all the witness mark lines that come down that muffler. That tells me it had a larger can that was just wobbling around and around on there in the wind. So this thing could have spent a lot of time sitting outside, and these Farmalls are notorious for leaking water into the rear cases because it settles into these depressions that these top case bolts reside in. And then that's just basically a straight through open hole. It can weep past the bolt, past the threads, and eventually get down into the gear compartment. It can also come in through the shifter, although on this W4 it's hidden under the fuel tank enough that I think that was probably pretty well sealed. But we need to do bottom plug checks on this case to make sure we don't have water that's settled out in the bottom of anything. So we've got 2 drain plugs on these cases. Here's the first one up at the front, and we've got the second one. Again, just like a Farmall H or a Farmall M, second main drain is on the back of the pumpkin, right back here. Okay, no water. We've just got the brown gear oil, so that's a good sign. I'm already thinking I should just drain this gear oil out and throw some new in there. Let's see what's below the bull gears. In this climate too, if you get water that accumulates in the bottom of this pumpkin and then it freezes in the wintertime, it'll stick the tractor. Or you could even, in worst case scenario, pop the bottom of the housing out when you try to move it. Just thick milky gear oil here too. No liquid water, so that is a good sign. The turkeys are passing through on their morning rounds. I talked me into it. I'm draining this gear case out. We're going to get all that milky gear oil out, and I prefer like a thicker 85 W140 for plowing and the like. I've got some cheap Tractor Supply store brand 80W90 that will do just fine in there for now, because it generally takes 2 to 3 drains and refills to flush all of that old milky gear oil out of these compartments. So 80-90 for now. I've got the small plug draining at the front. These hold about 6 gallons. That's a 5-gallon jug. We can get 2/3 of it out through that small drain hole at the front, it's a lot more manageable than the super big one on the pumpkin. So we drain it down until it doesn't come out up there anymore, and then just a little bit more comes out of the back end. So that means we've got some time while that drains to look at a couple of other things. We've got this steering box here that has a plug on the side of it, and I could hear Luke yelling at the screen because of my crescent wrench. I found a square head socket, and this one, in my defense, is the first good one that still has 4 good corners that I could use a socket on. So there you go. Of course, the H does not have this gearbox. The W4 Super W4 does, and I'm assuming there's going to be some gear oil in here, or there should be. So I like to use a zip tie for a dipstick because it's flexible. See if we can stick that down in the bottom. And we're not coming up with much, maybe a little bit. So we're guessing here. I don't have the manuals for this yet. They haven't shown up in the mail, but we'll put some gear oil in here too. What's the worst that can happen? It'll just run out if it doesn't want to be in there, right? Well, in case you're wondering, that took almost a full quart. Get around all these rods here so we can kind of see what we're doing. We'll get the plug put back in here and we'll move on. Steering feels good yet, so I'm not at all worried about it. No crunching happening. Quick belt check. Fan belt has been painted over, but good tension. It's not all cracked. And we have a generator in place yet. That does my heart a lot of good. That one's plenty good. That one's starting to get a bit dry, but it doesn't have to power much. And we've still got a few minutes, so if squatches are going to fit on tractors, the seats have to be all the way back. And this one was bolted all the way forward. So dust off of there. All right. That looks a lot better. And of course, I've got my trusty tube of grease out here because that's my version of anti-seize. So I always like to put a little bit of good stuff on the bolt threads whenever I have them out, because that way I know they'll come back out without a problem next time. And we've got all the plugs put back in on the bottom. We gave that plenty of time to drain, and since there's no good way to access the fill hole on the top of the deck here, I decided just to trough it in right here, because this gear fluid, this gear oil I should say, takes so long to run through the long spout of a funnel. I get a lot farther, a lot faster, just carefully troughing it right to where it needs to go. It's always good to check the oil in the air cleaner cup too. Everything else has been pretty clean, and pivot you guys down a little bit so you can see what I'm seeing. So far it looks pretty good, and I can't uncover any sediment in the bottom. I don't dare tip it more than that for fear of it running out. It's at the line. We're gonna go with it. It's looking good. Now we get really brave. First time I've had the hood off. Here are a couple of lube points that are usually always forgotten on these tractors. Generator has this spring-loaded oil cap right here. Has a passage, goes down to lubricate the front bearing, and there should be a flip cap back here as well, but this is a rubber style cap, but there's an oil port beneath that. So this doesn't take a lot, just a couple of drops in here, because you can over lubricate these as well. But I like how there's some of this kind of greasier dirt has stuck to the back. That tells me that someone has been putting oil in this one from time to time. So give this guy 2 to 3 drops cap back on. There was also a single oil cup on the back of the starter as well. I just put a few drops down in there. Off camera, it was too tight to try to get everything in here and still see what I was doing. And the final step is greasing. I want to show you, we have a grease fitting on the water pump right here and another one back there that lubricates both of the bearings. And they have these little brass caps that thread over the end of the zerk, sorry, and that keeps everything clean in there. So use discretion on these. I usually do about one pump because you don't want to over grease and blow seals. Other points to mention, I just greased the clutch pivot where it goes in that side of the bell housing. I hit this one as well. We have a grease fitting on this brake pedal. I just gave that a little bit. The clutch pedal over here that's so wobbly loose because it's a Super Series tractor, and they all seem to do that. That one has a fitting on it as well, but I chose not to hit that one because at this point I'll just be making that an even larger mess for when I do go in to repair it. And somebody had greased everything in the steering already. We see some fresh grease coming out there, some fresh stuff there. They've got a bunch of fresh that is pushing out at the bottom of the spindle on each side. We have fresh grease coming out up on this end of the main drag link, so I left all of those alone. There's also fresh grease coming out of the steering column, so I'm betting both of the fittings on that gearbox were lubricated recently as well. Here's another point that is often forgotten. We've got this screwdriver slot plug that's on the side of the distributor housing, and the manual states periodically you remove that plug and then install a grease fitting in its place. You can then shoot some grease into that distributor drive, then take the grease fitting back out and reinstall the plug. I don't know why they didn't choose to just keep a grease fitting in there all the time. It's the way they did it. Final point that you might want to look at, but again, use some discretion. Beneath this cover, bottom of the bell housing, you will access the grease fitting for the clutch release bearing. Now that fitting is usually on the end of a piece of pipe or two about that long, and more times than not that tube is full of old and dried grease. So I think I'm going to leave that one alone, because I think if you pushed a lot of that old dry grease up into that bearing, you may do more harm than good. So I'm just going to feel this one out, see if that clutch release bearing seems noisy or rough. If it is, then I usually take that tube off, clean it out, try to put some grease in, or just bite the bullet, put a new bearing on. So that about does it. We'll throw the hood back on, and I think we're ready to do a test drive. Okay, startup time. Neutral is good, so get about mid-range on throttle. I'm still feeling that out. Do a choke. We've got the gas on. The one time I ran this, it seemed like the carburetor might be a little bit dirty or out of adjustment, like it was running a little lean, but it ran fine then, so we'll give it another try. Ignition on. Crank. We've got good oil pressure. I'm liking this further back seating position more already. W4s are a little bit awkward, the way you have to have your foot so far up for the pedals, but let's just feel it out. We'll try some gears. This should be first. second. Clutch is a little bit grabby. I think it sat for a while. We'll do third. It does have that farmall whine in the back end. That should be fourth. I'm not going to try a fifth today because I can't be on machines that really bounce a lot. We'll make sure reverse works. Yep. Idles down pretty good. That's also where it seems like it's running the most lean. So should be back to neutral. All right. So far so good. It's still holding good oil pressure. Idle it down a little bit more. No, now that it's warmed up a little bit, it has a good low idle. Flat down to idle. The governor seems a little bit slow to respond, so we might be getting into that. Check all those carb adjustments first though. Okay, get the can back in place until I can find room in the shed to store this away for the winter. We're too late in the year to do much more with it now, but that's been my once over of a tractor that is new to me, that I'm not completely apprised of the history on. Encouraging so far. Back end is a little noisier than I'd like, but we know how to fix that. Everything seems to be present and working. A few little issues to work out, but for the most part, I'm happy with it, and I wouldn't be afraid to drive it around a little bit more because I know at least everything's got good oil, good antifreeze, good grease. We're set and ready to go. So all right, that concludes the episode. That's pretty much the same routine I do to every new tractor that shows up on the place. At least ones with wheels, ones with tracks. Surprise, surprise, are a bit more involved still, but you get through it. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed the episode, and I hope to see you back again.